Does anyone use anything else besides Plaxo, LinkedIn? I think some people use Facebook sometimes. I don't really like Facebook, although I'm on it. Facebook is one of those places where it's kind of like, I don't think it's truly professional. I think LinkedIn is the more professional version of Facebook. Has anyone heard of a site called Doostang? D-O-O-S-T-A-N-G? Now, Doostang is supposed to be like where the top tier jobs are for a lot of these companies. To be honest, I've actually joined Doostang only because my MBA program, a lot of my classmates signed me up for it, so I got signed up for Doostang. It's something to look at, but again, ultimately what I think you need to do is you need to look at the different types of networks and look at how they map. And then one of the things that I think you mentioned, which is good, is making sure you send messages to your network. Whether it's through a LinkedIn group, whether it's through an actual correspondence, you need to communicate with people. Because I'll be honest, if you Facebook friend me and I've never met you before, it's not going to have the same level of a network as if we actually met face-to-face and had a conversation. It's just the way things work. Nowadays, a lot of people kind of look at like Facebook or LinkedIn or the other varieties of connecting with people. Technology is great because it connects you, but technology doesn't really bind you. You don't build rapport through technology typically. It usually has to require some sort of face-to-face thing. It's kind of the reason why we're so easy to get rid of cold callers on the phone. When someone cold calls me and tells me they want to refinance my mortgage, which I don't own a home, or my favorite one is apparently my car is about to have its second, is about to run out of its, I can't remember what it's called, its maintenance agreement, and they want to know if I want to re-sign up for a brand new maintenance agreement for the car. My car is over 10, 12 years old. I am not re-signing up for a maintenance agreement on a 12-year car. But the point is that it's easy for us to dodge those cold calls. So one of the things you need to do is really kind of get your, and I think the previous speaker said, you got to get in people's faces. But let's talk a little bit about business cards. Everyone here probably has a business card, right? Or a networking card. Does everyone have networking cards or business cards? Now, I know this sounds silly, but if you don't have a business or networking card, especially if it's a networking card, and this is really towards college students mostly, all of you professionals out there have probably already know this one. You'd be surprised how many times I got a networking card that had a email address that was not exactly appropriate, wasn't professional. So if you ever are working with somebody, it's always nice to kind of point out if their email address isn't professional. I know I will tell you this, it's very important to have your business card wherever you go, and this morning when I woke up in my hotel room I realized I didn't have any business cards on me. So, such is life, I don't follow my instructions. I thought I packed them, apparently I packed them in another bag, which I didn't bring with me. The purpose of single-sided business cards are very useful because it gives you an opportunity to make little notes on it. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not offended, but some people might be. If you took out a business card and started writing down as you're talking to me, I'm not offended by that, but some people will be. And in some cultures, I did some work through Sultan in China, and I learned that writing on the back of a business card or writing on a business card in China is very, very rude. Same thing in Japan. Some countries it's actually kind of rude to actually draw on it, but we're in the U.S., so if you're not, unless you're dealing with a foreign company, it's okay to make a couple of notes on the back of it. And what I would highly recommend is where you met them is a good thing, so that way when you're pulling a business card like I did, you don't go, oh, okay, how'd this get in there? And then you're less likely to really do anything with it. But writing down a little bit of description of who they are, what you talked about, maybe what you actually had some rapport with, that would be definitely what I would highly recommend. And the other thing also is don't be handing out business cards willy-nilly. That's the other thing I always highly recommend that you don't do. Because that, I mean, how many people here, you have a stack of business cards and you just feel like you gotta whip them out. You should be whipping them out to people because, you know, I think someone mentioned it's your brand. You should hand them out to people who you've had a bit of a conversation with. Otherwise, people start to wonder why you're passing out business cards. The people who I get business cards from a lot, I hate to say this, sometimes what I'll do is if someone gives me a business card, we haven't even talked, I'll take the business card and then one of those little raffles to win a free lunch, I'll drop it in for a little raffle for a free lunch. No, I'm kidding, I don't really do that, but I have thought about that, and then give us the free lunch maybe. The other thing also to be careful of is your PDAs. A lot of people nowadays are beaming your business cards through like your BCFs. You'll beam it from your phone, possibly, or you'll beam it from your PDA to other people. You gotta be careful what you have in your notes section. Somebody accidentally beamed me their business card and had some probably not appropriate stuff in the notes section that they sent over to me, like what they were gonna do for that weekend and their plans and stuff. Just be aware of that. And the other thing to think about when you're thinking about networking is it can really happen almost about anywhere. I'd say for some people today, this is a random encounter, unless you came with friends. But networking can happen on a flight. And so always be kind of somewhat open to a conversation. And just be aware of that. And the key also is to be able to read nonverbals. That's like what I would say is one of the biggest keys. You ever had that person who's talked to you somewhere, like the grocery store, or maybe at a line somewhere, and you just wish they'd just go away and stop talking to you, right? So you probably gave them some subtle nonverbals. Be able to pick up on the subtle nonverbals. You don't want to be that person who's kind of like annoying somebody. But let's say you're at an organized event. The first thing I'd highly recommend is find yourself a good place to kind of camp out. Make sure you memorize the person's name. I know this sounds awful. I don't have a name badge on right now. It's in the back. But if you get someone's name wrong, it's a little bit embarrassing, especially if they're wearing a name badge. So kind of make sure you get their name right. That's usually a great way to have a bad impression. And then the last thing is never spend too much time with one person. You don't want to kind of overstay your welcome with someone. You want to talk with them, get a rapport. As soon as the conversation starts to die down a little bit, you maybe exchange business cards, then it's time to slowly move off. What I like to do is I like to introduce him to somebody else. I'll bring him to somebody else if I'm starting to get tired of somebody. And I won't do that to any of you guys this week, I promise. But if I am talking to somebody, I tend to steer them to somebody else who might be able to help them. Because for me, it's key about making sure they meet as many touch points as possible. So let's talk about your network now. So now you've got that list of like first, second, third tier. You've listed out where everyone's located on that actual map. Now the question you have to ask is, you ask yourself the same question is, how do you connect with them? Do you feel good about them? What about them do you admire? You basically want to kind of really pigeonhole them so that way you can have an idea of who you want to go to in your first tier, who you want to go to in your second. And think of it as like, from your strongest to your weakest, your A team to your C team. So your A team you really want to cultivate and nurture. And the one thing I like to think of is net worth. You have to ask yourself, what is the net worth of your strength of your relationships? And I actually have a formula that I actually play around with, and it's net worth is equal to the sum of all your contacts. You don't have to write this down, just follow me on this logic. It's the strength of the relationship, let's say it's on a scale of 1 to 10, divided by the, I guess you'd call it the degrees of separation squared. So if you think about it, the further removed somebody is, the less of the strength you're going to have with that individual. So sometimes what I like to do is if I have a 5-degree of separation from someone, I like to try to build my way a little bit closer, meet people so that way I'm kind of moving down the line to eventually that I'm actually like either their second degree or third degree, if not the first. Now, when you're looking at your list now, the first thing you should ask yourself is who there is going to return your email or phone calls, your first tier. If they're not going to return your email or phone calls, then you want to move them down to your second tier because you really want your first tier people to be the people who are going to email you back or call you back, people who are willing to actually meet you for coffee or lunch, people who will willingly give you information, advice, or assistance, and who might be willing to make an introduction on your behalf or give you business. Because you really want to focus on your first tier first before you start looking at your second or third, because they're not going to be as strong.